You know, people always talk about life reflecting art, and for me there's just always this back and forth. Like, I start shooting a project because I'm personally interested in something or have some kind of connection to it usually, and then through the process of years getting very intimate with whatever that subject is and thinking about it a whole lot more and building relationships off of that, it deepens my appreciation or connection to it to, you know, a much farther degree. So like for me, I was raised very outdoorsy. I played outside every day. I just kind of played in the stream, and I'd like always try to make stuff, carve things out of wood, or like you know, dig clay out of the creek bank and try to make a bowl out of it or something. And I was always interested in like wild foods, learning what foods are edible. I grew up in Saluda, North Carolina, so it's like, you know, a real beautiful area with a lot of biodiversity, and I liked learning about the different plants and stuff. And that's something that I kind of like dropped for many, many years since my childhood. I got into skateboarding, and that was this whole fully immersive culture, and I didn't really pay attention to anything outside of that. So I kind of left all that behind. But then later, through documentary photography, I kind of it sparked a new interest in that again, and so I started like looking for those kind of stories, like off the grid kind of stories, and just people living a more natural way of life. So that was just kind of something basically that I thought would be interesting as a photo story, and I had some interest in that because it kind of related to my childhood and stuff. But then through finding some stories, like the main one was this community called Wild Roots that's in western North Carolina, and they're like a primitivist. They don't like that word, but it's the easiest way to explain it. So anyway, just a real natural rewilding kind of a community, and I spent a lot of time out there shooting, and that process was kind of like, you know, they're a little bit secretive about their way of life because, for one, you know, the way they're living isn't exactly legal. You know, you have to be up to certain codes and stuff like that to live somewhere. So there's always that risk of someone coming in and just basically saying they have to leave, which would be totally devastating to them. So being sensitive to that, I really had to earn their trust. And the way that I did that was basically like when I was there, like my first time I went to Wild Roots, I stayed for 10 days. And I didn't shoot very much in that 10 days at all. I did a whole lot of work. Like, it was in the fall, so most of the work they were doing had to do with collecting firewood and cutting firewood, all with primitive tools. You know, they're using crosscut saws, and you know, they're hiking way out into the woods and having to clear trails through the woods to get to these big trees that they selected, and like cutting them up, dragging them through the woods, cutting them up into smaller pieces, splitting them, and then hauling them back to their site. It's like a ton of work. And then, you know, through the process, I learned how to do so many other things, like do certain repairs on like wattle and daub houses, which is what they live in. And so basically I'm just learning all this stuff as I'm out there, having to do with just learning about nature and how to live in a way that's more, that promotes a connection with nature instead of like a disconnect, which I think is the way most people live. So after that first visit, I just kind of like really got interested in taking some of those projects I was starting there and bringing them back home. Like, you know, I started doing some wood carving at Wild Roots, and I started getting some knives and stuff so I could do that at home, and doing a lot of carving spoons and little basic things like that, and doing some really simple wooden construction using no power tools, only hand tools, no metal fasteners, like no nails. It's only, you know, you whittle your own nail and then you use a mallet and hammer that in. And so it's just like learning things in that very simplistic form gives you a way deeper understanding of how something works. So like when you're just kind of doing everything really quick and using, you know, electric tools, you don't really get a sense for the material that you're working with. You don't really get a sense for like how it's held together. until you do it that really basic way, which is the way that everyone used to have to do it. And even things like learning about working with fire there, like sometimes you're cooking over a fire inside in a little hut. You have to really understand fire to know how to not make it smoky. You just know what kinds of woods to put on the fire so it won't be smoky, and how to arrange them in a way that it won't be smoky and it'll burn at the right temperature and maintain that right temperature for cooking. So all these things I got really interested in learning. And then at the time I was living in downtown Asheville, or in Montford, and I started talking to my girlfriend Kristen about moving somewhere with a little bit more in nature, and switching our lifestyle a little bit. We started looking. While we were in Montford, we were just looking every day. She was really diligent about checking like Craigslist and all these different places every day. And finally we found this ad for they called it a tree house, and we were just really curious and thought that sounded awesome, but we were like, how is that really a thing? Like, can you do that? Can we just go live in a tree house? That almost sounds like either too good to be true, or just like it couldn't really be real or something. So but we responded to the ad and came and checked it out. And there's all these logistical questions about what about, we have to hike from where we park to the house, so it's what about when it's dark and rainy, is that gonna suck? Or you have all these things you have to haul up to the house, like firewood and groceries and stuff all the time, and propane tanks for the cook stove. So all this stuff is these questions: is this really doable? Can we make this work? There's a composting toilet and no plumbing. That's kind of that might take some getting used to. All these different things were questions about, can we really do this? But we decided to kind of just ignore all those questions, and just say yes, people do it. Lots of people do it. The people at Wild Roots are living in way more basic conditions than this. So, and I've stayed there for extensive time, so I know it's possible. So we decided to just kind of ignore all those questions of the logistics of it, and just said, fuck it, we're gonna do it. So we did it. We got the house, we started renting it, and just being out here, through living here and cutting my own firewood for the whole winter. That's our only source of heat. And starting to learn how to garden, and continuing with some woodworking with hand tools and all these things. I've learned so much, and while doing that, continuing to document these stories that have to do with primitivism and natural lifestyles. I go to these primitive skills gatherings where I'm able to learn from an enormous wealth of knowledge that they have there, all these different teachers from all over the world. So yeah, it's just been an incredible learning experience, because it's one thing to go to those things and experience that for a weekend or a week or whatever, or go do this story where I immerse myself for a period of time, but to actually live out here and get to take those skills that I learned and then apply them to my daily life, it's increased that tenfold. I feel so much deeper of a connection now, and really, especially wood, the materials that I work with in working with wood, those tools and and the wood itself, I just feel I really know it. Any kind of tree that I know, all the trees that are around me right now, I know what every single one of them is. I could tell you, I understand the essence of those trees. If I look at a sycamore tree, I know how it burns. I know what any part of that tree, inside or out, looks like, even if I'm just seeing a little, little piece or something. And all these little subtle things that you would never think about, the sound it makes when you break it in your hands. Tulip poplar makes a very crisp sound, whereas hemlock right there is it kind of doesn't break crisply. It kind of bends and stays, it's real fibrous. So all these little subtle things kind of help you holistically understand the woods that you live in, and it's really profound to me to understand that.